Stress is a normal part of life, and learning to cope with it is an important part of healthy development. Giving a speech at school or work, making new friends, moving to a new home, learning a difficult subject are all examples of positive stress. Our body will respond to mild or moderate stress with brief increases in heart rate and mild changes to the body's hormone levels. Tolerable stress is a more severe stress response that can potentially impact a child's development over time, but its negative effects can be alleviated if it is infrequent and occurs in only short durations. This will allow the body and brain time to recover. Examples of tolerable stress might include having to move schools mid-year, the temporary loss of employment by a parent, or even the death of a loved one like a grandparent. The key element to making this tolerable is having a supportive environment. The body can manage tolerable stress in small doses, but if it is chronic and unrelieved, it will overload the body's stress management system. This high load is called toxic stress. Strong, frequent, and/or prolonged adversity without adequate support can cause a very severe stress response that impacts the child's brain development. Children in neglectful and abusive homes, for example, experience this level of stress. Imagine that you step out in the street and you almost get hit by a car. The driver honks angrily at you and you stand on the side of the road, heart racing, body numb, and your hands shaking. You're not even sure how you moved out of the way in time. It's all a blur. This is an example of the body's fight or flight response to dangerous events. It is one of the most powerful responses in our brain and bodies. In order to do its job, it must hijack the thinking brain to make a quick life and death decision. When the body enters into a fight or flight response, a series of hormones are released that activate the production of adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones have an effect on our heart, lung, pupil dilation, blood pressure, blood sugar levels, metabolism, and immune function. Early childhood, particularly the first years of life, are a critical window of opportunity for a child's brain to develop normally. If toxic stress is experienced during this window, it can reduce the actual volume of parts of the brain, including the hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex. The hippocampus is central to learning and memory. Toxic stress can reduce the hippocampus's capacity to bring cortisol levels back to a normal state after a stressful event. The amygdala will become overactive and oversensitive after experiencing toxic stress. In this state, the brain is easily triggered and keeps the individual in a continuous state of fight or flight reactivity. The prefrontal cortex is found to be smaller in adulthood when toxic stress is experienced in childhood. This area of the brain is responsible for the individual's executive functioning skills, such as emotional regulation, self-control, impulsivity, working memory, and organization. If the prefrontal area is underdeveloped, all of these functions could be missing in the life of the individual. To further explore the effects of toxic stress on the developing child, let's watch a video by the Center for Developing Child at Harvard University.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious, lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
As the video explained, relationships act as a buffer to the toxic stress, and if they are nurturing, stable, and engaging. The Trauma Toolbox adds an additional characteristic to this formula for hope: being informed. Adults who care for and work with traumatized children and youth find that having compassion is essential, but they also need practical tools for the job of parenting, teaching, and healing. Putting these qualities together can tip the scales for the child toward a more positive outcome in life.